Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. Well, I'm in between sets of bench. I'm going to talk to you about optimizing your competition training for sports and using principles of human performance to help optimize your skills training in sports. So I had a great question the other day from Simpson Go on Instagram, and showed me that he's thinking outside the box when it comes to training. So he's a jiu-jitsu practitioner and a jiu-jitsu coach, and the question was, wouldn't it make more sense to have his guys in competition training do 6, 7, 8 minute matches and then give themselves 3, 4, 5 minutes rest in between to fully recover before their next match? Because what he noticed was they were doing 6 or 7 minute rounds in competition training with only a minute in between. And what he noticed with his guys is they're either taking their time and they're pacing a lot slower in their early rounds because they know they're doing an hour of competition training, or they are gassing out. They're going hard in the first couple and then they're training like crap for the last couple of matches. So this is a phenomenal question because this highlights the importance of understanding human performance and physiology and being able to incorporate that into your sport-specific skills training to maximize your performance. So he's absolutely right in his observations, and this is one of the biggest problems I had with a lot of jiu-jitsu fighters that I worked with early on, and even MMA fighters, is they said they always felt crappy in their first match of a tournament, or my MMA guys said that they felt like they didn't wake up in the first round. It took them to the second round to wake up. And what I learned really quickly from training jiu-jitsu at a lot of these different schools and from going and watching sparring with a lot of my MMA guys was they were sparring too many rounds, or they were training too many rounds of competition with minimal rest, and they weren't really getting a proper warm-up. So they were having crappy first rounds in competition training. They were using that as their warm-up. So in their sparring, they use this first round as a warm-up, or in their jiu-jitsu, they'd use their first round of competition training to kind of get warmed up, and they wouldn't go that hard because they knew they were going to do 6 or 7 or 8 rounds in that hour. The problem is when you get to competition, your body's going to adapt to whatever it's been exposed to the most, regardless of what you want it to adapt to. So if you train that way all the time, that's how your body's going to adapt, and that's how you're going to perform when you get into a tournament. Hopefully you get an easy match in your first match, and when you don't perform at your best, you're still able to move on and get better as you go along. But we can solve this problem by optimizing your specific training, because that specific competition training should be the most like what you're going to see on fight night or the day of your tournament than anything else that you do, because that is the most specific training, so therefore it's going to have the most transfer and the most carryover. But if we think about the rules of specificity, the more specific I can get that training to be, the more likely it's going to carry over. So Simpson was absolutely correct. The best way to train his athletes in his competition training and get the most out of it would be go 6 minutes or 7 minutes, whatever the exact time limit that you're going to fight in your tournament is going to be, and then get plenty of rest in between. Rest for 3 minutes or 5 minutes, plenty of recovery time, because if you're fighting a jiu-jitsu tournament, you have 10, 15, 20 minutes to recover minimum in between matches. So you don't need to get your body ready to fight 10-minute matches with a minute rest in between. All you're going to do is train your body to go slower at a slower pace throughout the whole time, or gas yourself out early on by going really hard, and then you'll still be going slower because you'll be so gassed out. Your body's going to adapt to that 40 minutes you just got of slow training where you were operating in fatigue and you're training sloppy. So unless your goal is specifically conditioning, that's not a very good way to train. And that's how we can take specific skills that we focus on in athletic performance, and we can apply them into the gym. So we can apply those strategies to work to rest ratios and different things like that, depending on what the goal for that program is. Same thing can be said for a boxing training or kickboxing training. If my goal was to improve your speed and power of your punching, it would make sense for me to have a speed and power focused session. Therefore, everything that we did for that specific session would be focused on as fast as you could throw those punches. We wouldn't do anything to a point of fatigue. We'd give you plenty of rest in between, and we'd focus everything on speed. Therefore, you're going to get that most optimal speed adaptation. The The problem with a lot of sport-specific time sometimes is we don't have the time as a skills coach. They don't necessarily have the time to piece all of those things out. Just like us as performance coaches, we have athletes who come in, we want to get them bigger, stronger, faster, jump higher, run harder, better conditioning, better flexibility. When we're trying to fix all these things at once, we end up with too many different inputs going in, and the body doesn't know what to adapt to and what to respond to. And that's what happens when we don't have time in skills training too, is we work on punching power, we work on punching speed, we work on accuracy, we work on technique, we work on endurance, muscular endurance of punching, we work on cardio endurance, and again, we're sending too many signals to the body, so we're not going to maximize our adaptation. I'm not saying that's wrong. You could still get benefits from that, and I'm sure there's people who have gotten to world-class levels, but the more science that starts coming into these practices, the more you're going to have fighters and athletes who are preparing their body in smarter, more efficient ways. And what will happen over time, when you fight that person who is preparing themselves in that more optimal manner, you're going to lose. And that's what's going to happen eventually. And it will already start to happen. It's already happening in MMA and in a lot of these sports. But most people are still all practicing on this kind of same level. So you don't see the differences in that type of training, because when you go out and compete, you're competing against somebody who also had a suboptimal strategy, and they both have the same kind of, let's just go hard all the time in training, and let's shorten our rest periods because then we're going to get better and get better conditioned. But the goal of that competition training is not conditioning. If the goal is conditioning, we should be focused on something different. So separating specific parameters and understanding what's the priority. What do we want to fix? What's the underlying most important thing that we want this athlete to be able to leave this practice doing better? And what skills do we want to transfer? What do we want to transfer over into the cage or onto the mats? Let's prepare them as specific as possible for those durations, those intensities, so that when they get out to the mat, their body is going to go through this routine and replicate that. And that's how the body works. That's how we optimize the specificity of training. So that's a phenomenal question from a sport coach who's thinking outside the box and applying concepts of human performance to his athletes and what he's seen on the mats. I hope this video has been helpful for you. Share this one out with any of your friends who train jiu-jitsu, who train MMA, any combat sport, or even any sport, who want to optimize, especially for coaches, who want to optimize their skill-specific practice and use these principles of human performance, specificity, and transferability of training in order to optimize that practice and get the most out of all of their training. I'm Coach PJ. Thanks for checking out this video. I'm going to get back to my bench session. I'll see you next time.